Hello everyone, this is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. A few weeks ago, when I asked for suggestions for videos, Sam Mangum suggested I do one on the astral souls of pets. And I thought that was an interesting topic. I knew a little bit about it. I'd had some experiences before, and I decided I would have to do some physical research as well as some astral research to really pursue that. I'd narrowed it down, though, to dogs because I have experience having a dog as a child, and I like to talk about things on this channel that I have experience of, not just something that I read about. So let's think about dogs for a minute from a physical standpoint, and we'll talk about how they've co-evolved with humans, not only on the physical plane, but also on the astral plane. It's been said that dogs are man's best friend, and we've been partners with them on an evolutionary journey now for at least 32,000 years. In my studies, the timeline is all over the place. But somewhere between 15 and 32,000 years ago, domestic dogs started to evolve. They evolved in ways that were very similar to the way we humans are evolving in our brains and our various organs. Studies have compared corresponding genes in dogs and humans. They found that both species underwent similar changes in genes responsible for digestion and metabolism, such as the genes that code for cholesterol transport. Now, those changes were quite dramatic because it happened when we started changing how we ate animal versus plant-based foods. And that change also affected the evolution of dogs because, they started eating very similar things to what we ate. They didn't get these scientifically designed foods specially supplied to dogs today. They got a share of whatever it is we were eating. So they evolved in very similar ways. Their serotonin levels changed to be more like humans. And in humans, for instance, our level of aggression has come downwards, as did theirs. It's interesting that antidepressant drugs help out humans, but they also help out dogs because of the way our brains have evolved together. It's no secret that dogs can read human emotions. My dog was named Snowball when I was a kid, and we had her from the time I was in second grade all the way up to the time that I was a senior in college when she passed. And, I know she could read human emotion when somebody was depressed. She could understand human speech like many other dogs can. She would stare into my eyes and, I would make me feel good. And we know now that when a dog and a human stares into each other's eyes, it creates oxytocin, which is known as the love hormone, the bonding hormone that we humans use when we stare into each other's eyes. And when my dog Snowball would look into my eyes, I felt like she almost was looking into my soul. And that's going to be the second part of this whole thing. Do dogs have individuated souls? And if so, how did that occur? Now, when we talk about dogs, we're talking about 33% of people on Earth own a dog. So that's quite a large number of people. Now, let me just make a note about cats real quick. I was going to make this a more generic video, but in studying cats, they've gone off on a little bit of a different angle than humans and dogs did. And I've never had a cat, so I didn't want to just try to shoehorn them into this whole experience. So I'm going to keep it here on dogs. The human's relationship with dogs, I think, is extremely interesting, especially when you take a look at the history of our antagonism towards wolves, which is, of course, the species that dogs split from somewhere around 32,000 years ago. Whenever humans have interacted with wolves, it's usually gone very badly for the wolves. Wolves were exterminated throughout Europe, the UK, and by the middle of the 20th century in the United States, they were all but extinct in the lower 48 states. So we humans love our dogs, and we see something in our dogs that causes people to call them their fur children. Yet wolves still have this innate wildness that brings out this hatred that we have previously shown towards them. Now, of course, hunters, and before humans settled down, we were hunter-gatherers. They saw wolves as competition, so it's quite understandable that they decided to try to lessen that competition. But let's talk about the difference between wolves and dogs real quick. And let's get into my astral experiences surrounding these two basic species. Now, years ago, I was astral projecting, and I had previously projected into a wolf-like creature back when I was checking out what it was like to be animals. And I've shared some of those experiences with you when I went into that giant prehistoric crocodile's body. And I think I may have talked about when I was in a giant fish / shark's body. And I've done some other ones too. It's a very complex and it's an iffy type of process, but I have done it. And after I checked out this type of wolf's body, I was curious about them. And when I started concentrating on finding out about the soul energy of wolves, I found myself in what I would consider a subplane, and it didn't feel like I belonged there. And anybody who's astral projected to various areas knows where you belong and then they know where you don't belong, because it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like you should be there. And I'm sure anybody who's dated someone whose parents didn't approve of them probably understands what it's like to be somewhere where you don't feel you belong. So I found myself in this extensive wooded subplane, and I kind of called out to the energy there so I could see if I could question something. And pretty soon this king wolf, if you will, came out, and it showed its teeth to me. So I decided to take on the form of a wolf and try to surround my surface thoughts with the thoughts that I had when I had occupied that wolf's body. And it seemed to placate the animal, such that I was able to do some very elementary communication with it. And what I found was that there was no individuation amongst wild wolves from a soul energy standpoint. They shared a soul matrix in common. When a wild wolf died, it rejoined that soul energy matrix, and it was then reconstituted in some way that I couldn't quite understand, that it would occupy then another wolf's body. So they weren't individuated souls. And I started thinking later on, and certainly for this report, I started thinking, what about dogs? What happened with dogs? So I did an astral projection late last week, and as often happens, I popped up at my parents' house, which is where all of my astral projections had originally started. And that happens still to this day. It's almost like a homing beacon. I just pop up there and then I go from there. So I decided to look for my dog to see if she was still around. Because from time to time I've heard off comments from my mother, who used to sleep, with my dog at night when my father was away at work. And she would make comments like, "Oh, she's still around." And, I just thought that was curious. And so I looked around for a bit, and I was able to find my old dog in her astral form still hanging around. And she looked a little rough around the edges, almost like either the astral body was degrading, or perhaps what the thought form that was holding that body shape together perhaps was getting a little vague, a little old, so that it was becoming a little bit more indistinct. At any rate, I approached her, and at first she ignored me because I think she's probably been, used to being ignored, not to our own fault, but it's been about 30 years since she passed. And but when she saw that I actually acknowledged her, she perked up and started wagging her astral tail, and she was just going crazy, realizing that that I could see her and that we could interact together. And as I touched her, I had that sense, a sense that there was something here that wasn't some group soul, that there was an individuated soul here, that it had felt itself a part of our human family, and that perhaps that feeling is what has affected dogs, and that as they have become a separate physical race, that perhaps they have also become a separate individuated soul species, much like humans, so that they have co-evolved in a way that not only have their bodies changed, their physical bodies have changed, have become more like humans in their brains, in the digestive system, in how they interact, how they interpret our human speech, how they can generate oxytocin by looking into our eyes, much like humans do with one another. And it seems to me that if her soul is still hanging about our family home, that seems to me to prove that there is a separate soul now. This is not some group soul that would have rejoined the collective upon death. After we played for a while and had our reunion, I decided it was time to get some more astral information. So I kind of accessed the plane where I usually access information from. All I do is just think very clearly, and I will myself to the information that I need. So I ask, where did this split occur? What was the origin of the split where dogs would become these individuated souls closely aligned with humanity from wolves, who are these wild animals that have a group soul energy? And I found myself flying and hovering above what I can only consider to probably be some sort of European mainland many thousands of years ago. Below me was a primitive human village. Couldn't have had more than 10 or so individual little hovels. And outside the immediate area of this little impromptu village, and please, when I say village, don't take it as something permanent. It looked to me to be something very mobile. There was piled outside of this whole area a lot of refuse. I saw stray fur. I saw some of the entrails of animals that must have been hunted down and then cleaned, and then the meat taken, and I'm sure the fur as well. Whereas the intestines and everything else was at least in this case unused and just discarded a short walk away from the immediate vicinity of this little village. And I saw there wolves, and they were eating this refuse. And most of them were very jumpy. And, the minute they saw a human, even if it was yards away, they would kind of run away. But there were a few that seemed to disregard the human's presence, to be very comfortable with it. And I sensed by scanning their minds that they were no longer afraid of the scent of humans, in that these animals ate better. They had more pups, and then their pups became used to the smell of these humans. In that eventually they just stayed longer and longer and became members of the tribe in that way. So if you think about it, it's less humans adopting these wild animals and more the wild animals deciding to adopt humans. And looking at it from a soul level, that physical decision had an impact, because by deciding to form an alliance with this other creature, with this human, they made a decision. They had to change physically. They had to become comfortable with the scent of these humans, which their wild cousins and their forebears could not do or were not willing to do. They had to adjust their level of aggression, because that would not have been tolerated. And humans themselves, too, I'm sure, bred the animals that were the least aggressive, at least destructively aggressive, so that that physical trait was carried on. And at the same time, remember we've said below, as above, so below. It also works the other way around too. When the physical body started changing, when the brain of the dogs started changing to become adept at reading the signals of humans, of partnering with humans in the hunt, partnering with humans in watching over the livestock, they had to become more aware. Their brains had to become more adept at reading the emotions and the wants and the needs of these humans. And so this process, I believe, began the individuation, the creation of individual souls for these individual animals. So what does this mean? Well, it means that, you dog owners out there have beings that you share your home with that are capable of having their own soul. They're capable of deciding whether to hang about when they pass. And so that lets you, I think it gives you some comfort, knowing that your best pal may still be around and may still be looking to rejoin you when you are ready to pass on. But I think it also opens up another area which I wish I had thought of when I was a child, that it's possible to astral project, I would imagine, with your pet. I mean, if they have individual souls, if my dog is still present at my family home in her astral body, well, and we know that dogs dream, we know that they do. So it seems to me there's absolutely no reason why that wouldn't be possible. Now, I can't speak from experience because it never occurred to me to do that. But for people out there who have animals, who have dogs, and wish to astral project with them, perhaps that's something you can try. And if you are successful, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a comment somewhere along the line so you can share it with the rest of the Astral Club members. So I want to thank Sam Magum for the suggestion here to talk about the astral evolution of dogs and its coevolution with humans. I think it was a good idea. And I just want to let everybody know that we're closing fast in on 3,000 subscribed Astral Club members. That's exciting. When I first started the channel, I didn't know if I'd get 100 subscribers. So I'm happy about that. If anybody has any comments about this topic that you'd like to share, I'd certainly like to see the questions and comments below. And if you liked this video, please like it. If you want to share it, do that. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. If you have subscribed, why don't you hit that bell button? That way you'll always be notified. So I just want to thank everyone for listening. And as always, I will see you on the astral plane.